Yes, hello. I think we can start. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Eva Tönnesmann from Across. I will do the moderation. And today's guest webinar will be on the Japanese market, which is a market known for its many implicit rules in business behavior and, of course, an important trade partner for Europe. And I have the pleasure to welcome Sien and Tine. They are both business development managers at Yamagata Europe, which is the European daughter company of the Japanese Yamagata Corporation. Both of them have a lot of first-hand experience in working with Japanese colleagues and customers, and Tine also holds a degree in Japanology. Hello, Sien. Hello, Tine. Great to have you here today.
Hello.
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 As an organizational information, of course, we will send out the webinar slides after the webinar, so you don't have to take notes on everything. And in case you have a question, just type it into the chat window. At the end of the webinar, I will moderate a Q&A session where I will read out the questions to Sien and to Tine. So, Sien and Tine, welcome again, and please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar about Japan. We hope that the topics that we've put on the agenda today will be interesting for any one of you who is already working with Japanese customers, colleagues, or suppliers, or for any one of you who plans to do so in the future. Or, of course, also for anyone who is just curious about Japanese culture and language. My name is Sien, and I will be presenting today together with my colleague Tine. As Eva already mentioned, both of us are working for Yamagata Europe. Yamagata Europe is the daughter company of the Japanese corporation, which was founded over 100 years ago in 1906. Yamagata is a family-owned business with almost 2,000 employees and is represented worldwide with several offices in Asia, Europe, and the United States. Yamagata's mission is to help our customers operate globally by making sure that everyone understands their message. In other words, that means that we can take care of our customers' documentation projects from start to finish by providing services such as technical writing, translation, layout, printing or publishing through alternative channels such as website and video, and we also provide packaging and shipping as well as some software creation. Again, my name is Sien. I started working at Yamagata in 2009 in our quality assurance department, and I spent quite some time working with Japanese colleagues to optimize quality processes. I also spent a few weeks in Tokyo for this.
Hello, I'm Tine. I hold a Master in Japanese Studies. I'm working at Yamagata since 1999. I started as a project manager, but in the meantime, I have also been working in Japan for about 1 year in total. And now I'm still quite involved in doing business with our Japanese customers.
Today we would like to share with you some important things that we have learned about Japan during our careers in order to help you overcome the cultural and linguistic challenges that you might come across as well. We would like to start today's webinar with some general facts and good-to-know practices about Japan before going deeper into specific Japanese business communication. We would also like to take a closer look at Japanese as a language and the implications that this can have for both human and machine translation. I guess we can all agree that the main reason why we are here today is because we all know that Japan is different. And in case you weren't already convinced that Japan is very different compared to Europe, I think that one glance at the pictures on this slide will do the trick. Here we're of course talking about very obvious differences such as traditional clothing or capsule hotel rooms. Everyone who has been in Japan will also without a doubt agree that Japan is a beautiful country with so many cultural attractions and breathtaking natural resources. So that's another good reason for being here today. And if you're still not convinced, Japan is also great fun, as you can see on the illustrations on this slide. For those of you who may already start feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of these differences, I would like to stress beforehand that not everything about Japan is difficult. For most things, the Japanese have very clear rules and guidelines, and once you know the rules, it's actually quite easy to stick to them. But on the other hand, some things about Japan are difficult, and that's exactly what brings us here today, to help you prepare for future business trips to Japan, and in general also for business cooperation with Japanese colleagues, customers, suppliers, and so on. Let's start off with some basic do's and don'ts. Very important to keep in mind is that Japanese people are usually very punctual, so it's best to also be punctual yourself. Showing up a bit early for meetings, by default, in fact, is a very common thing to do. Also good to know is that blowing your nose in public is considered as very poor manners. The same goes for pointing at things with your finger. If you observe Japanese people, you will notice that they will use their entire hand instead, or kind of wave with their palm to show you something. Also, calling on your mobile phone while on public transportation is not done. Texting, on the other hand, is very common. And when visiting someone's home or some restaurants, you will be expected to take off your shoes, and your host will have slippers available for you by the doormat. Very important regarding these slippers is that there are different slippers for going to the restroom too. Always be careful to change back to the normal slippers afterwards, because going back to the dinner table in restroom slippers could bring you in a very embarrassing situation. And finally, if you are given a gift, it is considered impolite to open it immediately in front of the person who has given it to you. Normally, you would wait until you are alone later. It's always nice and much appreciated if you bring gifts from Europe yourself, also when visiting Japan. That being said, we are ready for some more specific business-related topics. A well-known cultural difference is bowing instead of the Western handshake. In theory, there are very clear rules for bowing. So in general, the deeper you bow, the more formal, and this is especially the case when you meet elders or, for example, your boss. But as there is always a gap between theory and practice, it could be advisable for foreigners who don't really know the bowing etiquette to skip this ritual and to replace it with a safe nod or even just a handshake. This is usually very accepted for non-Japanese natives. Another meaningful ritual is the exchanging of business cards at the beginning of a meeting. And here the term ritual is not at all an overstatement. Again, there are clear rules to follow. It's important to accept the other's business card with two hands and to place it on the table in front of you. Never put the card away in your pocket or your wallet, and definitely don't write on someone else's business card, as this is considered very disrespectful. And then that brings us to dinner time. Also here, there are some important things to keep in mind in order to avoid coming across as poorly mannered. For example, it's not uncommon to let your host order for you. So that means that your taste buds could be in for quite a surprise sometimes. Also good to know is what to do with the oshibori. These are the warm damp cloths that you may receive in some restaurants. These are intended only for your hands. You might sometimes see people wipe their face too, but generally this should not be done. And I would also like to advise to practice using chopsticks beforehand, although your host will also gladly show you how to. Crucial to know beforehand is again no pointing with your chopsticks, no playing around with them, and also not to leave them sticking into your bowl of rice to rest, as this is known as a symbol for the dead. When you're not using your chopsticks, just place them neatly onto the usually wooden rest piece available on the table. Another common dinner rule is that you don't refill your own glass. You can refill someone else's glass, but then the etiquette expects the roles to be turned, so that someone else will refill your glass. Make sure to hold your glass with both hands when receiving a refill. And finally, another typical Western mistake could be to offer a tip to your waiter. This is not done in Japan, and it's even considered as disrespectful. All of that being said, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Tine now, who will shed a light on some more detailed subjects in business communication, and who will then also continue with the linguistic aspects.
Hello. I will take over now. Important to know when you do business in Japan is also that face-to-face communication is very important. In a customer-supplier relationship, this means that as a supplier, you need to do far more customer visits in Japan than would be typical in Europe. We distinguish different types of meetings. Let me explain the three most common. The first meeting I am referring to is the aisatsu meeting or the say hello meeting. It's really short meetings and not necessary to have a fixed agenda. The intention is just to meet and greet. The second format that I would like to highlight is the nemawashi. This is part of the standard business vocabulary in Japan. Let me first explain the origin of the word nemawashi, as this makes the concept easier to understand. Nemawashi is a word that was originally used by gardeners when they had to transplant a tree from one place to another. It literally means go around the roots, so dig around the roots, remove the soil and the dirt from each individual root to free the way to place the tree in another spot. When in a Japanese company someone has a great idea and wants to propose it to his management, he will not just do it in front of everybody before finishing his homework. He wants to avoid that the harmony will be broken. He first would go and talk to all his colleagues in small teams or have just one-to-one meetings in order to tackle all the potential problems and prepare his business case very well and reach a consensus before the official meeting with his management. The result is that by the time the proposal is made to the management, all obstacles have been cleared and investigated. Then it could only take 5 to 10 minutes to take the final decision. The last meeting that I want to introduce is the nomunication. It is actually a mixture between the Japanese word for drink, nomu, and communication. This is really an important form of communication in Japan because going out for drinks or going to a karaoke is an important Japanese bonding ritual not only with clients but also within one's own team. In Japan, the gap between formality and informality is much higher than we are used to. So in this perspective, it's good to know that in order to gain the trust of your potential business partner, it's good to have drinks together and show your inner feelings. Oh, the slide is stuck here. It's not working.
Maybe you can close it again with the escape and then open it.
Yeah, okay, thank you and sorry for the interruption. Then some keywords in business meetings are sorry and thank you. Of course, we also say a lot of thank you and sorries, but in Japan, sorry is really not a hollow word. I have experienced once, and it was quite a strange experience for me, that I had to join my Japanese colleagues to a customer, and obviously there went something wrong with the delivery, and the meeting was about a quarter of an hour only saying sorry, sorry, sorry. That was just the topic of the meeting. So when something goes wrong, really take the time to express your sorry. Also, when there is meetings, do your homework. Be prepared and tackle possible pitfalls beforehand to avoid discussions and surprises during the meeting. Also, always stay to the topic. And also be patient. Starting or setting up a business in Japan can take a while, but once everybody is convinced, it can really go fast. Now I would like to tell you some details about the Japanese writing. The Japanese writing system consists actually of 4 alphabets. The Japanese kanji, or the characters, are adopted from the Chinese script because the Japanese did not have a writing system the first years of Christianity. So they just adopted the Chinese script. Kanji are ideograms, meaning that the whole character conveys a meaning rather than just a sound. Since Japanese is a different language from Chinese, simply using the Chinese writing system was not sufficient. To give an example, Chinese doesn't have verb conjugations, but Japanese does have these. So next to the kanji, the Japanese needed an extra script, a phonetic script for grammar elements such as conjugations and loanwords. So the hiragana and the katakana were invented. Then there is a 4th script, it's the romaji. It's a Latin script, but it is only used to, like if you have brand names, to express brand names or these kind of things. Examples of loanwords, like written in katakana, or words that are actually taken from Dutch, because the Dutch had a presence in Japan in the 16th century, and until today we still find Dutch loanwords such as dansu for dance, kompas for compass, and kohi for coffee. Also typical for the Japanese writing is that there is no spacing between the characters. And that is also one of the difficulties when you start learning Japanese, is to find actually the word boundaries. Here is some example. It is a lot of information, but I try to make it clear. This sentence is Mariga bergi biru o nomimashita. Mary drank a Belgian beer. Mari is the name, and it is written in katakana because it's a foreign name. Bergi biru is Belgian beer. It's also written in katakana as a loan word. And then nomu, it's actually the kanji in yellow. That's the root of the verb to drink. And then the hiragana below, mimashita, is the conjugation of the verb past tense. And then we still have 2 particles. The one is ga, indicating that Mari is the topic of the sentence, and the other one is o, meaning that beer is the object of the sentence. So here you can clearly see that one simple sentence consists of actually 3 alphabets in this case. Another important thing to know when you learn Japanese is that it's a really polite language. Roughly spoken, it can be separated into 3 levels of politeness. We have plain polite, we have honorific Japanese, and humble Japanese. KEIGO, the first form on the slide, is the polite language that is spoken on television and is also used as a base to teach Japanese to foreigners. The next 2 forms are humble and honorific language. This is the language that you typically hear in business language between inferiors and superiors, or a customer-supply relationships, or in the shops between the customers and the shop personnel. The inferior will speak humble about himself and honorific towards about his superior. There are fixed rules to conjugate the verbs according to these 3 forms of polite language, but the most difficult part of learning honorific and humble language is that there are a number of words that have separate verbs for honorific and humble forms. I listed the 3 forms for to go. Ikimasu is the plain form, is I go. Irasharu is respectful language with the same meaning, and mairu is when you talk about yourself to a superior, I go. Also in Japanese, a lot of words have the same pronunciation but have a different meaning. Here you see an example. The pronunciation is kikai, but it has 5 different meanings. The meanings can be read from the kanji, because if you have a good look, you see that for each translation there is different kanji, but from hearing the word you don't know it. So this is also one of the difficulties. There are not a lot of vowels, and a lot of kanji are expressed in the same way. So it's from the context that you have to read the meaning of these words. In Japanese there are also only 5 vowels, and the pronunciation doesn't change basically. The 5 vowels are a, I, u, e, o. There are some words that only consists of vowels. I list some, like ie is house, ue is up, ao is blue. It may seem simple, but mastering them is very important. In Japanese there is no stress or accents on syllables, but important is the length and the intonation or the pitch. Some examples: there is a difference in meaning between obasan, which means grandmother, and obasan, which means aunt. So, and this is also something that is very important when you learn a language, that you know the length of the vowels. Then again, there are a lot of loan words, but it is tricky for us because we tend to pronounce them in English, but then they are not understood. So you really have to express loan words with the Japanese pronunciation. So a computer, you don't pronounce it as computer, but computer. Hamburger, you have to say hamburger, because otherwise people won't understand you. Then the typing, you may have wondered already how you type Japanese. Well, basically it's just on a basic QWERTY keyboard. You type phonetically, and then the machine will propose, like a dictionary, the different kanji that are candidates for the words or the kanji that you type. There are in general more than 50,000 characters, but most frequently 2,000, a little bit more than 2,000 characters are frequently used. So if you want to read a newspaper, you should know about 2,000 characters, and these are combined, of course. This is about single characters, but mostly they are combined with 2 or 3 to form words. So let me now go to what are the implications for translations. Well, typically for the Japanese language is the different word order, and this is a big challenge. Also, there are no pronouns, no plurals, so it is sometimes quite difficult to judge about who are you talking. Is it singular or plural? So you really need to listen to the context. It is also very important to keep a consistent use of the polite forms. And as I showed in the previous slide, there are no word boundaries. So the cost model, when you ask a quotation for translations from Japanese, is based on character base, which is basically in a lot of cases only a part of a word and not going back to a real Japanese word. And also you need to check if your quality tools or your CAT tools support Japanese. In most cases it is like that, but sometimes there could be a lack of support. Then I would like to say a short word about machine translation, because in recent years we have seen a growing demand for machine translation in and from Japanese, mainly to translate internal communication, production schedules, or management reports between overseas management and Japanese management. Basically, the translation flow with or without MT is quite the same, only instead of only using translation memories, we include an extra step, namely pre-translation with a machine translation engine. So you see when you look at the 2 flows on the slide that in the upper flow there's only a human translator, a translation memory in black, and a human translator, where if we look at the flow with MT, that we see translation memory usage in black, we have an extra step machine translation, and then comes again a post editor or a translator. We must admit we just already mentioned some challenges for translators, but these challenges are really bigger for when applying machine translation. Most difficult part is the word order difference and the missing pronouns, because the machine cannot read the context. Also, word boundaries are not defined, and there is no singular and plural. So how do we tackle these challenges? Source optimization is for non-Japanese languages or Western languages already a big challenge, but for when doing machine translation for Japanese, it is even a bigger challenge. So for English to Japanese, what we do is we make the English source a little bit more Japanese, and this is by changing the word order in such a way that it is more like the Japanese word order. And when we translate from Japanese to English, one of the things we do, for instance, is to make sure that we start from the plain level of honorific language, so the plain formal language. Then also important when applying machine translation is that you have enough legacy data. For non-Japanese language, mostly 200,000 bilingual segments is sufficient to build a statistical machine translation engine, but for Japanese we really need a lot more data. Also important is that when we want to use the legacy data, we do already a pre-segmentation of the Japanese segments. So why did we include a part about machine translation? Also because I wanted to highlight that we are confronted with a growing demand of translations into and from Japanese, and one of the reasons is that tourism in Japan is truly boosting. 2015 was a top year with about 20 million visitors and a growth of about 47% since 2014, which was already a top year. And we estimate a growing number of visitors will only increase considering the level, for different reasons. One of the reasons is that the level of the yen is currently quite okay to go on a visit there, and also we have the upcoming Olympics in 2020, and we see that Japan is preparing for that, and this results in a growing demand of translations in and from Japanese. So we are already at the end of our webinar. I truly hope it was interesting for you, and if you would have any questions, we are ready to answer them.
Thank you, Sien. Thank you, Tina. I found it very interesting. And while all the participants, please type your questions into the chat window. I already have two questions. And the first one is on the business behavior. When you meet Japanese colleagues in Germany, for example, will they then adapt to the European business rules, or do you still bow or behave more the Japanese style usually?
Well, to a certain extent, they adapt, of course, but when you take them to a restaurant, you really have to take into account that to treat them as a guest. You do that with your normal customers as well, but especially with Japanese people, it's very important to guide them. Mm-hmm. And also for the business card exchange, that's really rules. The basic rules, they stay. They won't adapt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then another question from my side on the politeness levels. When you write a usual manual for a machine and translate that, which politeness level will you use? Just like, please, would you write turn the screw, or please turn the screw, or please be so kind as to turn the screw? So is it polite or rather not?
No, it's more direct.
Okay.
So you would have the plain formal form.
Okay.
So it is not in the honorific, it's because it would also be too long in the manuals, and then it's just giving the instructions and being clear.
Sure. Any other questions from the audience? If not, of course, you can contact Sien and Tina directly. You have your contact data on the last slide, I think. Yes?
Yes, we do.
So if there are more questions or if you need some advice on the Japanese market, just write to them directly. And two other notes from my side. If there are no more questions up to now, we have another webinar coming up next week, and this will be with Don Shin from One Stop Asia, and it will focus especially on the Chinese languages. And then in April, we have another webinar from this season with Konstantin Yosseliani and Alina Vasilyeva from Janus, which focuses on Eastern European and Central Asian languages like Russian. So feel free to sign up for those. So no more questions, I think. So thank you very much again, Tina and Sien, for this very interesting webinar, and for everyone attending, have a nice, very nice afternoon.
Thank you also to you,
Thank you
Eva.
for your attention.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.